with strings.
What if suddenly you wouldn't be allowed to speak Swedish in Sweden? How would that affect people? What would happen to the person? I sometimes play that thought, because actually that is what happened to my culture.
68, there were a lot of Jews that were thrown out from Holland, for instance. And when they came to Sweden, and then in Poland you didn't speak Yiddish because it wasn't good to be Jewish at all. So they pretended they were not Jews.
When I was growing up, I didn't quite realize what I was missing culturally in my life. You don't quite realize what you have or what you lacked until you actually learned it. I did come from a native Hawaiian family, but none of my family members speak the language, and so I am the first in several generations to have learned it.
People were dying out of foreign diseases at that time at a really high rate. Right now, the Hawaiian language is still kind of relegated to the classroom. We have a need to make the language more visible in all the other arenas of our society.
We as Hawaiians have a duty to really revive what was once ours and to bring it back for the sake of our ancestors and for the sake of our generations to come.
A few months ago, there was that incident on Maui where a man in the courts, the judge refused to recognize him because he was responding in the Hawaiian language instead of in English. That caused an uproar, of course, because Hawaiian is one of the official languages of our state, so you should be able to conduct business in Hawaiian language as well as in English.
It was about the fact that I was speaking Hawaiian that he never liked.
So I realized that's pretty important, to be able to make the hearing of Hawaiian language
Could you please translate for the members?
and the speaking of Hawaiian language
I don't want to translate. Mahalo.
more common in our wider community.
There's a lot of misinformation about pronunciation among residents here, and so just initially learning how to pronounce the street names and the city name, those things you can get 20 different answers for one pronunciation. And once I got into actually learning the language, I found that actually most of those are incorrect.
With language revitalization, you want to one day be able to say that, yes, this language was banned before, yes, it was dying before, but we've brought it back and now it's being used in everyday life and in the same way that English is used in our islands. So by normalizing the language and making Hawaiian language accessible to people through mediums such as theater and film, that's something that allows things like this to spread a lot more.
Hold up your fingers. Ekolu. Once upon a time.
The play is called Ekolu because it's 3 stories for children. Ekolu is 3. Each story is about 3 characters. The 3 billy goats gruff, the 3 blind mice, and the 3 little pigs.
If you don't let me inside, I'm going huff. And I'm going huff. And I'm going no, you're not.
I think a lot of people can benefit from kind of learning such traditional and familiar tales in Hawaiian, because, you know, with Hawaiian language revitalization, it's not just about like preserving the past, it's also about incorporating the language into our modern day.
It was simple language because it was the 3 blind mice, the 3 little pigs, you know, and the 3 billy goats gruff. So having known the story, I was able to relate some of the sentences.
You know the song, sing with me, the tune.
Incorporation of gesture and body language, it helps connect ideas much more solidly in the brain, I think. The kids, seeing that would help them also remember cow. Oh, the billy goats, they did this. Cow, that's goat. So it would help them make the connection. And grass, and my actors still walk around and say, "Moo."
If I had a prop, I could hook the line to the item. So to clean the house, once you see that brush, it brings up the line.
Cecily was definitely a testament to how hard the actors worked. Cecily had probably the biggest role out of all of us. I definitely give her major props for that.
Every time I would come on up to something that I didn't know what it was, I would say, "Hey, Ahakiya."
Most of my actors had very, very little exposure to Hawaiian language, so I worked with Navahi, the Hawaiian Language Immersion School, to have some of their high school students come in to be part of this project. Those students had no exposure to acting.
Going down the road, the two mahua'as, when they would go down the road,
They learned from our actors here on the UH campus, and I think it worked well.
I was the only speaker of the UH Hilo students. Most of them came to the consensus that learning the show was extremely hard, but so many of them felt that it was just really worth it to be able to see the lasting impression that it leaves on the students.
okay, read after me. Mi'i, Vaina, Nui. Now who thinks they know what that means?
Every school we went to, we gave these pre-assessments and post-assessments. And every time we would verbally quiz the children on the Hawaiian words that they learned, it's just amazing to see how in the span of an hour that they were able to pick up on so much. Several of the students overlapped after-school programs.
It's just a quick little worksheet.
And for those students, they were even like stepping up as kind of leaders to their classmates, because they're kind of like telling them, hey, this is what the play is about, we're gonna learn Hawaiian words, and I learned what this word means last week. If what you learned in an hour can be equated to what you could possibly learn in like a year or 4 years, I think that just really speaks to the power of education through theater and language revitalization through the arts.
I'm not done compiling all the numbers yet, but it looks like, they learned. So that's great. But what was amazing was the actors, how much they learned.
A lot of people began incorporating some of the language into their conversations with other students. Tom Rafanan, who plays Kamoa, or the rooster, one of his famous lines in that show is "Aiehea kamea ai," or "Where's the food?" So whenever Tom and I are hanging out, he will always ask "Aiehea kamea ai." So that was super cool for me as a Hawaiian speaker.
It's now months later and I hear them in the hallways using Hawaiian language when they had had no exposure to it prior to that. So that really warms my heart.
My class especially developed such an immense appreciation for Hawaiian.
It's a good way to learn about the culture and to create relationships with people. Coming from place and from culture is important to the soul and the self-esteem of the people.
Our home resides within a host culture. We kind of should feel obligated to understand the language of that host culture. I think it's important for us to know that, to be able to understand the culture better and to be more respectful of the place that we live. If you learn to look at things from another language, that's opening up your horizons, so you realize that that's possible, to not just have such a narrow perspective on the world. Pretend you're a little girl at the door.
Like you said.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel a connection to the way that I'm starting to understand how Hawaiians interact with the environment. We look back in history, we look at the ways that Hawaiians, for example, navigated the oceans and the ways that they described the ocean creatures, that these ways of thinking were far advanced in terms of how they really appreciated and understood their environment. And now some of these ideas are proven to be scientifically valid, and also of course they are culturally valid.
Indigenous languages hold keys to knowledge that our ancestors had that sometimes we've lost. In Hawaii we have so many different words for rain. There was a whole book written on the different names for rain. And in Alaska you have so many different words for snow because that's what's important in that culture. And you have no clue about that if you don't have some understanding of the indigenous language.
And that translates to knowledge is not just learned in only one school. The arts really help to enhance anything that you're putting your mind to academically, because it allows you to find ways to express yourself outside of the classroom and to share your knowledge in a creative way to help others learn what you're learning.
My goal long term is to build a pool of actors who are able to perform in the Hawaiian language. So we've got people who are, hula dancers, beautiful hula dancers and singers who can perform in Hawaiian language, but we don't have actors who can do it. So I'm slowly, baby steps trying to create a pool of people who can, so that we can reach out even more to audiences.
As I understand, we have a similar history the past 100 years with the same experience of not being able to develop our culture and our languages to the level where we could have been. I see that the similarities. We were not allowed to use our language in school. We had to speak Swedish. We were not allowed to speak our language. Not even with my friends could I speak Sami during school time. So of course something happens to you when you have to switch off something. My grandfather, he was many times taken by the police by singing traditional songs, kept in a holding cell. But during the 70s, a lot of things started to change, mainly because there was immense networking that started in the 70s with all the indigenous people in the world. We got a lot of strength from each other. And at that time, I never thought that traditional singing would have the same value as it has today. Sami theater has been existing since the beginning of the 70s, and it started with very small projects. It was not professional. We did something, we toured a few weeks, and then it was over. And in the beginning, it started actually from a lot of political resistance, creating performances from the traditional stories, and then going to an era of Western classical plays and trying to transform them to a Sami. Like now we're preparing a performance. It's based on a book, and it deals with the forced relocation that the Swedish state did 400 years ago with the Sami people. From a book that's 800 pages, transferring it to stage, it's a big job. We have now government funding for the theater, and it's been the same funding now the past 30 years. And everything gets more expensive, so we cannot break away from the laws. Sweden has a legislation. There's 5 minority languages, and Sami language also is one of the 5 minority. Who says this is a minority language? Who has decided that? I have very hard to relate that my language is a minority language. For me, it's a majority language within my culture. We're people of this ground. This is our traditional land. Because we do have another point of view on what our responsibility is as human beings on this earth. For instance, in Sami the word mother and earth, they are the same word. So when I call my mother, I'm actually calling earth, you know. And when I talk about the earth, I'm actually talking about my mother. There is so much validity in traditional knowledge. For instance, in the Sami way of thinking, always in the beginning the fetus was female. And I was talking once with a doctor. He was researching all this stuff, and he said to me, but that's true. It has to do with the XX and XY chromosomes. He said, from the beginning, all fetuses are female. And Sami people knew this without studying 6, 7, 12 years. It's just carried on in the tradition. I think there's a lot of keys to a lot of the problems. There's a lot of solutions within the indigenous people to a lot of the things that we are struggling with today. And the main thing for us who are born in these cultures is to we gotta take care of it, the knowledge, like a little fragile baby, because there is the key to the human existence. This is a place for growing and taking care of the culture, the theater, and then being able to bring a message to the audience from the heart of our culture. Theater as a profession for Sami people, I think it's a great opportunity for developing yourself and understanding your place and your culture's place in this big world. I'm working very hard now to get the Sami people and giving them a chance, young people, to work at our theater, to make them want to stay within the Sami community. When people are young, they kind of dream about the flashy world out in the big cities. And young people, they need also role models, and they need a little bit of stars to look up at, to be able to reflect yourself and your values on a big screen where people are talking the same language. It meant very much to me. As long as we manage to make interesting projects, interesting performances, then we can attract the young people. In school, you're just sitting with a book and reading from a book, and that's kind of boring, you know, for young children. So we created something which we call a language circus, teaching Sami language with the circus methods. If you're just sitting with a book, it kind of, you store it somewhere up in the head, but when you learn something by using your body and being active, being physical, becoming sweaty, and falling down and standing up, then it kind of sits in the body in another way. And this is a method that we've been now working with for 2 years, and it has actually become very, very popular in the educational system, and so it's a permanent program now. We've been running it for 2 years. I think we should really pimp up our languages and make it really interesting and making it like a sport to learn another indigenous language. Make it to something really fun. It shouldn't only be tied to the traditional, practices. Our languages should be seen in theater, in television, in the radio, everywhere.
Most of the parents who came to Sweden came 45 after the war. They came from the concentration camps. They were rescued and came to Sweden. A few thousand of the Jews, and they settled down here, and most of them spoke Yiddish. And that was a big revival for the Jewish life in Sweden, actually, when they came. There were millions of Jews speaking Yiddish in whole Europe. There were many people in Europe who didn't know any other language than Yiddish. So Yiddish was their mother tongue, Mamelution, as we say. There is a lot of Hebrew in Yiddish, of course. Yiddish contains like 40% German and 40% of Hebrew. And it's also written in with Hebrew letters. And the rest is the language from the country where we live. So you mix, it's a mixture. The language between people coming from different countries. And Yiddish they had in common, so they could speak Yiddish, they could talk to each other. And it was also considered as a language for quite uneducated people. So the people who went to universities and so they didn't speak Yiddish because they thought it was like a step down. When Israel came, was grounded, they wanted all people who come from all the different countries to have a language together in common. So they forbid Yiddish and created new words in Hebrew, because Hebrew was maybe an old language. Hebrew is a very well-developed language by now. So now they're more friendly to Yiddish. When my mom died, I realized that I didn't have anyone to speak Yiddish to, which I wanted to, because it's more maybe a feeling that you don't want this to disappear, because it was a whole world. There was a lot of movies, a lot of books, and a lot of plays and people, songs. There is a lot of songs that people all over the world know, and they would sing it in the same way. Like for instance, I met a guy at the airport in Paris, I think, or was it Rome, and he was from Buenos Aires. And we could speak Yiddish, and he started to sing a song that my mom used to sing. So we have something in common that we almost, it was fantastic that people from all over the world actually have the same background. And so we want to keep it alive, we want to keep it living. I went to the circle of Yiddish speakers here in Stockholm. And there I found people who thought the same as I did. We have 3 or 4 members of our group that are a little bit younger, but otherwise we are quite old. So it's difficult to get people interested in learning a completely different language that they can't use in the everyday life. But we have 3 members in our group that have learned Yiddish very quickly, and they can read and they can write, and I've noticed that they often speak Yiddish to each other when they are together, and which is so nice. Theatre is a very good way to learn a language, to learn culture, to learn your writers, your traditions, how the life was lived before. It's your history, it's your heritage. So that's why I think the theatre is the best way to learn about your background. And what we do is that we have subtitles in Swedish, so that people who don't speak Yiddish can follow. Our first play was about a group of actors looking for a play for them. Actually, we wrote a lot of it by ourselves, and it was quite fun, but not very good. Last play we had to play 5 times because people wanted to see, so we had to do it more. And now we are actually invited to Paris to come and play it, because in Paris there is also a Jewish theatre and they play in Yiddish. It was a very hard job to get it recognized as a minority language. But we are very happy that it happened, because it gave us a lot of opportunities, a lot of support. You know, when you leave your country and you come to another country, then you are never the one that is deciding on what is the right thing to say, to do, how to behave. But if I know my native language, I feel more certain about myself. I know who I am, and I can say, yes, this is the way we are. And when the World War II were in Europe, they pushed all Jews very down, and people think that they are not worth anything, that they are lower class. And this is a way to stand up for yourself, to tell them that this is what we are, and we are okay. I think so. So Yiddish is a way to be proud of myself.
That hurts my heart to think that there's so many cultures in this world, and mainly indigenous people, where everything has been just, closed. It's like taking the life source out of the culture, and it has just stagnated to something, or even degenerated to something. So we will not be whole humans, we will not be happy until we get back our recognition and self-value as the ones we are, as carriers of our traditions.
I think with language revitalization, it's very much about kind of restoring what was lost in a sense. I would never say it's a waste of time, because I think culture is something that is so rich and invaluable, and it should never be erased from history. If the language is alive, the culture is alive, and Hawaii can prosper as it once did.